Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast, and a very special welcome to a man coming in from Knoxville, Tennessee, Mr. Justin Goodbread, CEO of Financially Simple. How are you, my friend, on this fine Monday in Tennessee?
Yeah, Monday afternoon, I think my time, early Tuesday morning, your time, brother. But I'm blessed. Thank you thanks for having me.
It's it's great to have you on board. And you were saying today is a work day for you, which means in the office, lots of strategy, lots of emails. I thought a man of your caliber and your experience, you'd take Mondays off.
I was talking about this on my podcast, my personal podcast, and teaching our coaching clients that I live a very structured life. So the way I've derived my life, so I can have freedom. I'll talk about it as a business owner. We've got to have freedom. And so my wife and I, we schedule our time off every year. So I take the months of June, July, or August off. I take November off. So I want to go to the Rocky Mountains here in the States and watch the elk bugle and the white-tailed deer run. But then, I take Saturdays and Sundays. I don't do any work outside the office. But Monday through Friday is my time. So Monday is my prep time where I'm working with my team. I'm working on internal systems. What's broken? Where do we need to add value? Right now, and as we're recording this is in December 2024, and I'm working on the results we had this year. What KPIs or critical success factors do I want to look at next year, and trying to make sure I tie our team's production to that outcome. So Mondays for me is a time whenever I just have a chance to just download my brain from the weekend, work on the things in the business. Now, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, that's game on. I mean, that's me hitting the ground rolling, running one of my 5 companies that I own. And then Fridays, that's when I take off and just play and goof off and then kind of wrap the schedule up. So yeah, Mondays is like, let's make it happen, Captain. Here we go.
Love it. And you were saying before when we jumped on, just before we pressed record, you're saying you're a bit weary today, but just looking at you and listening to you, it's mate, you've got a lot of energy for a Monday.
Yeah, well, you know how it is. For those of us who are on the microphone on a regular basis, we have a certain point that we want to educate, but we also have to entertain. And I found it very hard, Darren, whenever I listen to a podcast or watch a YouTube channel and the parties are dragging. It's like, I don't want to talk to you. So anytime I get in front of the camera, it's like, okay, here we go. Turn it on. Let's roll. Let's see if we can help some people. So I'm excited about the business owners on here today. I'm hoping that, as my dad used to say, son, leave them better or leave them alone. I hope that by the end of this conversation, there's a nugget that you can grasp that'll change your life for the rest of your life. That's why I do what I do at this point. After selling 7 businesses, Darren, reaching a status that many people would dream of reaching before I was 40 years old. At this phase, it's like, another dollar is not going to change much in my life, but leaving an impact and helping those who are in front of me, behind me, wherever they are, that they may can enjoy this journey a lot better than it has to be. Not maybe have all the scars and bruises that I have, all the things that I've discovered through this world that we live in.
It's going to be a fascinating conversation. And you mentioned building and selling 7 businesses. You run 5 companies today. Love to take you back and get you to give a bit of the background story of Justin in terms of, what got you into the world of business building, entrepreneurship, because there'll be a lot of principles and lessons along the way that other business owners, but also people who are in corporate, who are running enterprises for organizations around growth, and even what you just spoke about just before in terms of the structure and the protection of your time, I think is a really important thing I'd love to delve into. But can you just give us a background on what got you started into this sort of business? And was it something that was in the family? Was it something you just woke up one day and said, oh, I think I'll just go and start a business?
No, I was actually trained to be a business owner. So I was homeschooled way back in the day whenever homeschooling was not popular anywhere in the world, for that matter, much less here in the United States. So back in the early 90s, my mom and dad brought us home I was in 3rd grade, and they homeschooled us from 3rd grade on throughout all of our undergrad or all of our high school days. And they had gotten involved with this company back in the day, like a multi-level marketing company, Darren. And they ended up meeting people on stage like Zig Zig Ziglar and Charlie Tremendous Jones and Og Mandino. And they would begin bringing home these books about, hey, here's how you can change your mindset and how that mindset will lead to so much positivity. And I can remember my dad and my mom are my heroes. My dad's no longer with us. He passed away years ago unexpectedly. But in that day, he's just a blue collar worker. He would load the ships that would take corn and cars across the globe from the Georgia ports here in the States.
Hmm.
And he would come home from work tired, exhausted, working for, as he called it, the man, right? And he came home one day and he said, son, you'll be 15 or you'll be 16, you'll be 15 this weekend. If you don't have a job by this Friday, don't come home. Now, I was homeschooled. I mean, it was a family event, right? Whenever Pop said don't come home, he meant it. But then he went on to say, Darren, he goes, you can't work for anybody I know. You can't work fast food and you can't work for a grocery store. Now, in a small town where I grew up, the last name of Goodbread is not that popular. Okay. It still isn't. But everybody knew my dad. It was like the book, Do You Know My Mother? The little bird that runs around. I forget which one who wrote that. But it's like, do you know my mother? Like, do you know my dad? Yeah, I know Alan Goodbread. He's got a good name. He's a good man. Ultimately found a job. I ultimately ended up cutting a guy's grass. He paid me $40 to cut his grass. Came home. My dad came home that day from Friday. He's like, son, you look like you're smiling. You must have got a job. I said, well, not really. I didn't get a job, Dad, but I got paid $40 to spend 2 hours and cut Mr. Brown's grass. Mr. Brown said he didn't know you. He said, I don't reckon I know Mr. Brown. Now, he lied. They already had this thing arranged. But he ended up sending me down the step there and he said, son, I want you to take a principle here. Your mom and I have been raising you to think like a business owner. And as a business owner, you just made in 2 hours back in the 80s what I spent my whole day working for. At the age of 15, you just made more money. Now, by the way, you owe me $5 for rent and gas on the lawnmower that you just used. And so I ended up with $35. So that led into my journey, Darren. So we took the little grass cutting company, my brother and I, ultimately within 2 years, the two of us were making more money than my mom and dad combined in income as business owners in our teens.
Mm.
And I guess with the training and that experience that my father and my mother crafted for myself, my brother, my sister, the three of us, not just me, the three children all launched into business ownership. And we reached decamillionaire status before the age of 40
Mm.
because of this business owner journey that we all learned to love and that we were trained for. It was a fun journey.
It's fascinating, and I mean, having the benefit of parents that are teaching you those sort of principles early on. Thinking back, that would have been probably at that time quite unusual because most people would have been conditioned to work, for the man, inverted commas, get a good job, spend 40 years in the industry, and then probably retire with a gold watch and thanks very much, and go off into the sunset. But through that process, because I'm sure it wouldn't have been easy, and I'm sure you've got a lot of war stories through the process. Looking back, were there anything that happened in the formative years that you look back on that may not have necessarily been a positive experience, but when you look back at it, it was the experience you needed to have that helped you, I guess, project forward in terms of your business and your capabilities?
Yeah, I think that the caption I want to pull out of your question is the formidable years, because the formidable years for everybody is different.
Mm.
For me, it happened to be from the age of 15 to the age of 21. And it where my mom, who has a master's level in nursing, she left the hospital and came and rode around in a truck with me and my brother and taught us what it was like to do work underneath your name. Actually take pride in your reputation. Look a man in the eye, shake their hand, do what you're going to say you're going to do, when you say you're going to do it, faster than you say you're going to do it, before you say you're going to do it, and deliver more than what you say, right? So all of these values that now I attribute in my own life happened in that formidable years from the age of 15 to 21. I'll give you another story. My dad and I are walking on the hunting camp. We were out deer hunting here in the South, and we're walking down a fence road there, and I see a turtle upside down on its back. Nothing out of the ordinary. You would see that in the woods oftentimes when you're walking, but my dad simply reaches down and turns the turtle over.
Hmm.
And in that moment, it wasn't like to question him on why, Dad, but I said, Pops, so I called my dad. I said, why did you just do that? He said, because I could. And I said, no, 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 no. I get you can, but what made you turn it over? He said, because I could.
Mm.
And I'm like, no, Dad, you're not hearing me. He said, son, you're not hearing me. And he grabbed me by the shoulders and he said, son, I want you to remember something. If you have it within your power to help somebody, do it. So little principles like this, spending alongside my mentors of my mother, my father, along with the people they hired. They hired people who are business professors at university come and teach us
Mm,
business. They hired these people, spending every dollar they had, Darren, investing in their children, saying that they were going to give us a better life than what they had, where they came from. So I think that everything in my life, as well as anybody who's listening to me, everything in our life comes in that formidable years. Now, that formidable years may happen in your 40s. I have some
yeah.
clients now that I'm coaching that spent 20 years working in industry, but now they're out saying, look, now just like Colonel Sanders, who ran Kentucky Fried Chicken here in the United States at age 60, I think five, launched his business. Well, now they're in their 40s and they're now applying these principles that they've learned throughout their formidable years. So I think for
Mm.
each of us, it's different.
I just want to pick up on one thing you said. Your dad shared with you, and that is because I could. If you look at business today, and certainly in corporate, there's a lot of transactions, and we talk about value creation. I'll ask you questions about that as well. But the fact that because I could literally says I have the power to help somebody. I'm actually going to serve somebody, but I don't necessarily have any expectation of something in return coming back to me. So it's doing it because it's the good thing to do. It's the right thing to do.
You know, Zig Ziglar was made popular for this statement, and I think he's impacted those of us who actually listen to him for any length of time. And friends, if you've never heard Zig Ziglar, he's now passed, but go on YouTube and listen to his motivational talks. He talks about this one concept. He says, help others get everything out of life that they desire, and you'll get everything out of life you desire. And that was the principle that Dad was trying to sum up in that moment, saying,
Mm.
because I can. That little turtle probably could have eventually got himself over. They can. But how easy was it? How effortless was it for him just to turn it over and us to sit there and watch that little turtle move on its own? It didn't cost my dad any money, and there's nothing that turtle could do to repay him. But I think what Dad was teaching me in that moment through his own high school education was taking the very principle that Zig Ziglar has made popular that most of us ascribe to
Mm.
and apply it in a lesson that his, at that time, 17-year-old could get through his thick skull what Dad was teaching. So I think the formidable years, brother, I think each of us have those. And I firmly believe this. I believe this all my heart, Darren. Every person listening to us right now has something that only they can do. I believe that. God put us on this earth for something that only we can do. He's created us in that fashion. So with that mindset, everything that we've gone through, all the victories and all those hard times that each of us have faced has prepared us for today, but it's also preparing us for that ultimate thing that we're trying to push ourselves toward. So
Mm.
even now, the formidable years for each of us is happening today in this very conversation. You and I are gleaning things that are going to help us move forward to that ultimate destination that we have.
Yeah, it's such a good principle. And as you were talking, I couldn't help but be drawn to the book that's over your right shoulder called The Go Giver.
Great book. Great book.
It's an awesome book. And
Yeah.
and I talk to leaders all the time about servant leadership and the fact that as a leader, you've got to give, 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 give with no expectation of anything in return because it's the right thing to do. Knowing that the more you give, the more you're going to get something back, but you just don't know where it's going to come and who it's going to come from. But that's the principle. So, you might be sitting there questioning, I'm trying my hardest, I'm doing the things, I'm following all these principles, but it's just not working. And there's another book called 3 Feet from Gold that's a very famous book as well that, you just got to continue to make sure you're staying on the path. As you talked about, God put you on this earth to do something very specific. You got to be able to understand what that is. And sometimes that is a process of discovery as well. But stay in the course and saying, why am I doing this and is it going to be worth it? Or if you're really clear on that and having all the principles that you've just spoken about, you're more than likely going to have a breakthrough and you're more than likely going to have an impact on others.
Well, and to your point, Darren, I think you've raised a very valid, but yet I want to kind of echo it. I want to speak into a very valid point, and that is oftentimes we don't know when that clarity is going to come. So for me, I'd already sold three companies. I'd already sold three companies, and I found myself on a mountaintop in West Virginia, sitting looking across the beautiful vista. West Virginia is a beautiful state for those of you who've never been here. It's very steep mountains, very wooded, and you find a location you can see just forever. And I'm
Mm.
sitting on the mountaintop with an old country boy. I mean, the guy's just salt of the earth, just a great guy. You just want to have fun with. And he's sitting there and he has a solemn moment there, and he said, Justin, I'm broke. I'm like, what do you mean? You're mid 50s. You've got a paid for house. You take exotic vacations. You have these paid for. You got all this stuff. I look down at your lot, and he has excavators and bulldozers and dump trucks and
Mm,
millions of dollars worth of equipment. He said, Justin, I'm broke. I spent 40 years as a business owner amassing this, but if I sold it all today, I cannot continue my lifestyle.
mm,
And he was right. And I can remember on that moment in that mountaintop, Darren, as I'm going, I've spent now 20 years building companies and selling them, but I'm broke. Now I was debt free. I'm in my early 30s. I'm moving and shaking, but I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to spend the next 20 years of my life only to have this mountaintop experience like this guy saying that,
mm,
yeah, I have all this stuff, but I can't sustain my lifestyle. So how do I do it? So for me, my epiphany came in that moment. I was like, I'm going to go back and build a company that's highly sellable. I'm going to build a company that's profitable. I often make the statement now that I've seen a lot of companies that are profitable but are not valuable. But I've never seen a company that's valuable that's not profitable. You see,
mm,
it's a play on words there. So for me, for the first 20 years, and for this gentleman, for the first 40 years of his life, he was building profits and he had high cash flow and he was living this amazing lifestyle. From the outside looking in, you're going, dude, this is amazing. You're on top of the world. But in that moment, in that mountaintop, as many of us might reflect on, he knows it's a house of cards. He knows he has to get up in the morning and grind and do that job and work for the man himself, as Michael Gerber says, is a lunatic. He's
mm,
literally working for a lunatic and it's himself. And I'm going, Darren, I don't want to do this, brother. How can I change a paradigm? So I remember coming back. It was December 2017. I walked away from $250,000 recurring revenue and I launched a new business with the intention of creating generational wealth within a 5-year period. It took 49 months. 49 months to have an 8-figure exit with this intentionality around how do I create a different approach? How do I build a highly valuable company?
mm.
So after I had that exit and I then worked as a president of the company who bought me and we had another exit, I'm sitting here now saying, as I told you when you asked me, Justin, how are you doing today? I said, man, I'm blessed. It's unbelievable. I'm living a dream because I get the opportunity to now shout it from literally the airwaves, the mountaintops of this microphone saying, friends, if you're a business owner, take a moment,
Mm.
think about your life. Do you have an asset that someone is willing to pay you money for? And if you don't, there's time, but you're going to have to drastically change the way you think. You're going to have to drastically move into a value direction versus a profitability direction. If you do, unlike that friend of mine, who, by the way, then had his 8-figure exit because we changed his paradigm, just like that individual, you may have to come to epiphany and say, I'm going to do things different. So for me, that calling or that clarity literally happened on that mountaintop. And then when I had the exit, I was like, you know what? My brothers and sisters, my business owner peeps all around the world feel this. They feel the angst of this business that's now holding them captive. They don't have the freedom that they desire. They have high sales. They know their craft. They know their trade, but they don't have freedom and they don't have an asset that someone's willing to pay for.
Mm.
So now it's like, brother, man, Darren, I want to get on the microphone and I want to tell people, wake up, almost like my dad did with that turtle. Listen, listen. It doesn't have to be this way.
And so when you talk, it's a great story. And when you talk about profitability and value, and I think it's a really great, and it's not a play on words. I think it's actually very, very, very valid point. If people are listening to this and thinking, well, I've got a good business, I'm working with a good organization, there seems to be cash flow seems to be okay, profitability seems to be okay, we're well positioned in the marketplace. From your experience and your perspective, when you're talking about value, are there specific things that you look for or you want to try and create that gives value, which means we've got an asset that is sellable versus just being profitable?
You know, what often happens and where this epiphany comes from is often too late. So your question is spot on. It's literally the best question I've had all day long, Darren. Perfect question. But we got to lay some foundation for it because we got to lay some foundation for it because here's what happens. Whenever that time comes, either by decision or default, one of those two things, when the time comes for you to part from your business, either by you, I'm going to sell it, I'm going to exit it, or I went through a divorce, I had some sort of disability, I had a health issue, I died, whatever it may be, you're going to leave your business. So by decision or default, there's going to come a point to where you're going to look and say, how much is my business worth? There's a gap. There's a gap between most of our businesses and an exact business who is best in class.
Mhm.
So in other words, look at a bell curve. We've all seen a bell curve in our minds. They teach us this at grade school, it feels like these days. Everybody talks about it online. So we know that if our business hypothetically is worth $1 million today, but somebody who's best in class, same revenue, same industry, same locale is worth $2 million. Everything being equal, there's a delta between the two of those. So there's things that drive an average business to one being at best in class. There's drivers that cause it to be best in class. Another way you might see it, especially in Australia, is you may see a multiple of seller discretionary earnings of 3,
Mm,
whereas a best in class gets 5x. So there's a
mm,
delta between the multiple. What ultimately happens are there's 8 value drivers. We're not going to have time today to dive through all 8 of those, but I'll give you the 2 highest ones that most people need to focus on. The first one is owner dependence.
mhm,
Most businesses, especially those of us who are business owners who love to sell, those of us who love our product, we're the best salesperson out there. We end up being at the epicenter of our business. Why? Because we know our product, we know our customer, we know our business, we know how our product can solve their needs. We've obsessed over their problems more than they have. And so therefore, it's natural for us. I can remember that whenever this hit me from my coach, he said, Goodbread, you got to quit selling. The very day I committed to my coach that I was no longer going to take any sales call, was training up an associate of mine in the company I owned. And literally the next call was the biggest customer we ever received. And I committed I wasn't going to take the call, Darren. I can remember sitting there with a whiteboard on the ground in his office. He's at his desk doing his best to close the deal, and I'm whiteboarding out questions for him. And I'm literally like chomping at the bit saying, how in the world can he close this deal? I'm the one who's supposed to close this deal. He ended up closing the deal, the biggest client our company ever had. And from that point forward, I never sold another deal. I also completely removed myself from the epicenter of the business. I began building the systems and processes.
mm.
Within that 48-month time period, that one move added over $2 million in value to my company by me moving myself out of the epicenter. So number one is, if you want to drive value, one of the key areas is move yourself as a business owner from the epicenter of the business. Number two is create a machine. Most buyers want to see that there is some sort of margin, whether that
Mm.
is, hey, I can take your company and I can take your widget, and I can buy your company and I can take your widget and sell it to our customers, or we're willing to put more cash into your company and scale it more rapidly because you're just touching the tip of the iceberg. Regardless of whatever and there's several other areas that a buyer will look for, but regardless of what it is, what they're looking for is, do you have a system that I can extract, that I can analyze, that I can chop up and I can pour cash into, or part and parcel it out so that I can maximize my current portfolio? So 2 things is, number one, move yourself as the epicenter of the business, and then create the golden goose. Easier said than done, but you can do it.
And I like the way you spoke about those because I think those two are intrinsically linked because often the business owner is the one that's the salesperson, the chief marketing officer, chief financial officer, and all the things that's creating the system, but they're kind of linked together. So to be able to remove yourself from that, which by the way must be pretty difficult. How did you mentioned before you were on the ground doing whiteboard stuff? How hard was that?
That was, I wouldn't say it's the hardest thing that I ever dealt with in business, but it was close near the top. We're talking a 6-figure sale on somebody who wasn't making 6 figures a year. And the business didn't need it, but it was like that pride thing that all of us business owners want. You know, we want to win the deal.
Yeah.
And I can remember sitting there, and when he got done, I was exhausted. I mentally, emotionally, physically, everything exhausted. I fist bumped him, and we celebrated. We had a nice big party at that point. But to me, it was affirming the things that we all know. See, the reality is that we as business owners, we're smart. We're a tenacious group of people. We wouldn't be in business, and we wouldn't have survived in business if we weren't tenacious and resilient. But oftentimes, myself included, and this is where I discovered with the help of a coach, is we do the hard work. We show up on a Monday and we fight the fires and we do the hard work. We deal with the emotions. We deal with the customers. We deal with all the crap that goes on, but we don't do the difficult work. We don't do the work that actually moves the multiple up. We don't close that value gap because we focus on the hard. We miss the great. As Jim Collins said, good to great. We miss the great focusing on the good.
Mm,
My challenge, and where my epiphany came, and where now I have the luxury and the privilege of teaching business owners globally how to maximize their value, is saying, look, you're doing great. You're doing good work. You got a solid business, man. You're rocking it out. Here's a virtual fist bump. Let's have it. But you're not great yet. We've got to move you from good to great. And that's going to require us doing that difficult thing. That's going to require you sitting on the office while your sales guy, first sales call ever, takes the largest customer you ever had, and trust them. It's hard. It's hard.
That's well, that's the big word, trust, right? Because as the business owner, you know probably the business and your product better than anybody. You have the conviction, and this is why, interestingly, a lot of startup entrepreneurs are the best salespeople for that organization, and they come and try to replace themselves with professional salespeople, and those guys can't replicate the numbers that the entrepreneur can generate because they don't have the conviction. But you've got to stay in it. You've got to stay in it for the long haul because you've got to think about, well, what is my exit strategy? What is my long-term goal here? I have to extricate myself from the business for the day to day so that I can build a valuable, profitable, exitable business.
Yeah, and it comes back to, I think you nailed it perfectly. What is the goal?
Yeah.
I have the privilege literally of talking to thousands of business owners per month. No exaggeration. And whether I'm on stage speaking somewhere or and they line up or people email in or if they reach out to the podcast, YouTube channel, whatever it is, literally I'm able to talk with thousands. And business owners, when I ask them this question, what do you desire? What's that one thing? My coach asked it this way to me, Darren, and I couldn't answer him candidly in that moment. He says, son, Justin, he called me son, Justin, if you had unlimited time and unlimited resources, not money, resources, what would you do tomorrow that you're not doing today? And I couldn't answer the question in the moment because I was living a dream, man. Darren, I had a business that we had launched from the ground up and the J curve had exploded. I mean, it was skyrocketing like a rocket ship straight to the sky. I'm taking off 4 months a year. My company is appraised almost 4 times what it should have been appraised for. I know the data points.
Mm.
And he asked me that question. I'm like, I don't know. I'm just having fun, man. I'm taking the next sale. And after a little bit of time, I came back and I said, you know what my goal would be? Spend more time with my family,
Yeah.
love my children more, teach my boys and my daughter business like my dad and mom did for me. Bring them alongside, build a business that my grandkids could get involved in.
Mm.
If I was in the financial services industry, it's hard to bring kids into that type of a complex, confidential type of structure. I can remember saying, I'd like to just take some chips off the table and travel the world. Been
Yeah.
a business owner 30 years. I haven't seen, I've been busy, head down. And in that moment, as I was talking to back into that by default decision, mine ended up being a decision where my business coach said, hey, Goodbread, based on your answers, you might want to consider selling your company. First of all, my stock in the company was if like, I forget, I don't know what Apple's trading at today, but imagine it 10x that. That's where my stock was. He's like, dude, you'd be stupid not to sell this for what they're offering you. So tell it, sell it, take some money. You're in your early 40s. Go live life and go impact people the way you want to impact people. So for me, it was a decision. But even in that, Darren, hard. This is my
Mm.
baby. This is my
Mm.
baby, man. I put everything in this company. My kids, they were in their infancy. They were helping me put Christmas presents together for our clients, right? I mean, the clients got a Christmas card every year from our family, and they had pictures of people who love it. So to be able to walk that, I honestly felt at that time as a failure. That how am I the guy who teaches exit planning nationally to Exit Planning Institute? I'm the
Yeah.
guy who's written books on it, Wall Street Journal winning books. I'm the
Yeah.
guy that literally coaches top CEOs on how to do this. And I can't even, I'm exiting my company. Really? So I can remember this imposter syndrome kicking in, but it all came back to that epiphany on the mountaintop of what do I desire?
Yeah.
And if I put that desire out, then I have to believe the same with the business owner who's listening to this. If you put your true desire out, you're resilient enough and you persevere through such adversity that you will reach that desire come hell or high water. I often say you'll charge hell with a water pistol to get that outcome because that's
Mm.
who we are.
Mm.
And so once I knew the desire, brother, just put it out there front and center and stay focused on that. Everything else works its way out always.
I think it's a really powerful message because whether you're a business owner starting out, whether you've been in business for a while, or even if you're running part of an organization where you're an employee at the moment, but the business is looking to exponentially grow, you've got to ask the same question, like why are you doing it? I ask leaders all the time, why are you a leader? Why do you come to this organization? Why are you in this particular role? And why do you keep coming back every single day? Because there are a lot of people, and you've probably seen this in your experience as well, people who start businesses often do it because they want to have the quote unquote freedom, but they don't realize how much work it is. So they haven't really defined that powerful why that's going to let them, I guess, go through the tough times and get out the other side and stay the course.
And to your exact point, what happens is they find themselves 2 decades later. I'm a testimony of this, right? 2 decades later, going, holy crap, I've just spent 20 years as a business owner And what do I have to show for it? Yeah, I have a paid for house, but my 401k is not anywhere near what employees are mine are. I haven't been saving, pouring it back into the business. And I've got 80% of my net worth tied up in this asset, which is highly illiquid, that I'm at the epicenter. Holy cow. Hopefully that epiphany happens, friends. Those of you who listen to us, hopefully that epiphany happens today.
Mm,
And you're not in your 60s or your 50s or your 70s and 80s saying, holy cow, I am broke compared to where I need to be. I don't have enough money to provide for my needs. I'm going to have to sell this company. And then one
mm,
of the things I love is, well, my kids will buy it. Well, great. Now you're going to make your kids put the business and your burden of your poor planning on their backs, or they have to pay you for the rest of your life. No, that's ridiculous, and they don't want it. So whenever you look at this thing of exit planning and building businesses and creating value and ultimately creating freedom, that very thing that you just mentioned that all of us want when we go into business is freedom, freedom of
yeah.
time, freedom to have somebody not telling us what to do, freedom to be able to take off when we want to take off, do what we want to do. That's freedom. And the business ownership affords that if if we start with the end in mind. If we're building our business, here's another thing that I teach. If we're building our business for our true
Yeah.
client, not customer. Your customer is who buys your service or who buys your product. That's your customer, your client. And there's only one of them out there, is the person or party who is going to buy your business.
Yeah.
If you're building your business for that true client and you have them in mind, and every decision you make is for that person or that entity or that competitive buyer or whatever it is, then now you've found your pathway to freedom, because that individual, that client, doesn't want a job. They don't want the headache that you have.
Mm,
They want a business, which is nothing more than generating wealth, a wealth creation tool that they can see substantial and regular outcomes from.
mm.
That's what they want. And if you build that for them, then you find that freedom, you find that scalability, you find your identity, you find everything that we want as business owners. We just are focused in the wrong direction.
It's a great statement, Justin. Can you just explain a little bit then, because you made the distinction between customer and client, and I get the fact that you're building the business for it to be sellable, that you got the ideal client that's going to be coming in and taking over that business. But in the process of getting there, you've also got to understand who your ideal customer is, and who are going to buy your services, so that the ideal client maybe starts to materialize because they can see the value. Are there things that you now know that you now teach people in terms of that distinction? So you've got to have a product and a service that's attracted to the marketplace. You don't want to be all things to all people, but also keeping in mind that who is likely to be the ideal client to buy this business in 5, 10, 15 years time. So how do you make that
Yes.
distinction?
Yeah, I'll walk you through my own journey and my discovery in this process, because I have dozens of stories I could tell, but I think probably the one that most near that hits home is the battles that we as business owners go through. And so I'm on that mountaintop in West Virginia. What I was looking for, and I was driving home about 6 hours, I'm going, what I'm in the financial world. How can I build a financial firm that generates 8 figures of income in 5 years? What is the buyer looking for? What is my client, the person who's going to buy,
Yeah.
looking for? Well, in the financial world, and you can apply this to your own industry, whatever it may be. So I'm trying to get very broad here. In the financial world, what they're looking for is they're looking for a younger demographic client or customer. Because as we know globally right now, we have this baby boomer generation that is that is starting to withdraw money out of their assets, versus the 30 and 40-year-olds who are trying to do everything through the web and not really
Mm,
work with an advisor. So, okay, can I build a firm that focuses on a clientele that's pumping money into their accounts, that's paying a recurring fee, versus a customer that's pulling money out of their accounts? Just a different methodology, right?
mhm,
So I knew that the marketplace, this is the norm, but here's where they're lacking. And that was a customer type. I also knew that in order for me to build a high valuable company in the regulation of the financial industry, marketing is difficult. So how can I create a marketing system that allows me to hit that particular clientele? And then how can I prove that I've got a ready demand of clientele who wants to knock on my door consistently wanting our offer? Which means I have to align the external message of marketing with the sales message with the internal offer, right? So I had to align them
mm,
all, price point, everything. Well, that what ended up happening is, as I was building this business out and testing it to make sure the marketplace could handle this business model for that ideal client, the person who's going to buy my business one day, ultimately discover that, you know what, not only is there a need for this, no one's ever built one. Why? Well, it's hard. Okay, That doesn't stop me. It doesn't stop you. You're a business owner. We like hard. We scoff in the face of hard, right? That's who we are. So I literally built this thing out, Darren, and within a matter of 2 years, I'd have dozens of customers every single week knocking, saying, "We want what you have." It's a premium product at a premium price point with an unbelievable client customer base that the client wants to buy for a premium dollar price. So the thing can be true for every business. So we had a swimming pool company, a company that builds swimming pools. They
Mm,
really didn't have anything to sell. And once they got done with the job, they had to go and repeat themselves to the next job. I'm like, hey guys, if you want to sell your company for a premium product, we've got to create recurring revenue. That's another value driver is recurring revenue. Let's create a division that cleans the swimming pools that you build. And let's build this division of the pool cleaning department larger than your construction department. It'll never
mm.
happen, Justin. 2 years. 2 years, we built the recurring revenue model larger than the one-time revenue model. And as such, they could have sold for mid eight figures because they knew we identified what is the market, what's the customer, the client, the buyer, what do they want, what does the market need, how do we attract the two of them. It was easy. So you find out, you say, okay, well, I've got a business making coffee cups because I'm holding one in my hand for my throat. Okay, well, if that's your business, interview the buyers.
Mm,
What are they looking for?
mm.
What makes the business best in class? What is it that that business has that makes them say, yes, I'm willing to pony up more money. I'm willing to offer a cash offer. I'm willing to get rid of the earnouts. I'm willing to get rid of the clawback provisions in an exit, all those various things. It's easy to backwards extrapolate if we view it differently from, okay, well, I got to work with any customer out there who can fog a mirror, which is what most business owners do.
Or they build a product that they like because they think I like it, so everybody's going to like it.
Not necessarily. That's why you're broke. That's why you're broken under the business and you can't have any freedom. So backwards engineer it. It's
And
not hard, but you got to think differently.
well, and that's the key thing. I think that you got to be able to think differently and change the paradigm. Because if you do the same thing as everybody's doing, you probably end up getting the same results, and it's hard to then differentiate. So as a business owner, it's hard to differentiate, but even in corporate, it's hard to differentiate because there's so many different products and services that on the surface look similar, might have similar features, and often there's a competition around just price points, right? So you've got to look at what is my differentiation, what makes me different, what experience do I create, what is it attractive that's attractive about me and my business and my offerings that people wanting to fall over themselves to want to knock down doors. Just look at Apple. I mean, why is it that Apple has people standing out in front of a store 2 days before a new product's launched when you wait for a couple of days and you can just buy it online and walk into a store and get it right there and then?
What's interesting is we've all heard of the rule of 80/20.
Hmm.
80/20. And for those of you who not welcome to the earth, but for the rule of 80/20, basically 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your production. Or you may say that 20% of your clients produce 80% of your revenue. There's a lot of ways you can derive that. My challenge to you is square the 80/20. 80/20, you're 80/20. What that ends up happening is 4%. 4% of your customers, 4% of your employees. If you're not a business owner, you're working in a large firm, 4% of your underlings, 4% generate 64% of the outcome.
Hmm.
Our job is, if we want to break the paradigm, if we want to move ourselves, whether that be as a business owner trying to figure out how we're going to build a scalable business, or if you're in an employee right now, you're trying to, how am I going to build a leader? Your job is to discover who are the 4% in front of you. Who are the 4% in a sister company? Who are the 4% out there within your ecosystem? What are they doing? Then mimic them.
Hmm.
Solomon, who wrote the book of Ecclesiastes, he made this amazing statement. He said, nothing is new underneath the sun. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his book Meditations, the same thing. There's nothing new today. Even Steve Jobs and Apple, as you just mentioned, Aaron, there's nothing new. It's just repackaging things. It's all the same old, same old. So for those of us who want to accelerate our business or our careers or whatever it is, find the 4% and copy them.
Hmm.
It's that easy because 96% of people won't do it because it's difficult. It's hard. It's going to require you to go against the grain. It's going to require you to put a different level of thinking in your mind. And so if you find out what the 4% are doing, 80/20 or 80 to square your 80/20 on this, dude, you rock it out no matter what you want to do in life.
Because it doesn't matter what product or what service. It's just and as you're talking, I'm thinking, one of the key principles here is curiosity, but also persistence, and maybe doggedness as well. But starting with curiosity and saying, oh, how is it that because you look at two different businesses, and whether it be a restaurant or whatever, you go to through two restaurants side by side. One has a restaurant full of people eating, and the other one's actually completely empty, right? And it looks like the menus are exactly the same. The price points are pretty much the same. What is it about that restaurant that has people flocking to it versus this restaurant, right? They're obviously doing something different. What we're talking about is find out what it is they're doing differently and model that.
In every area of life. In every area of your life. So to me, as we bring, I know you're getting close on time, but as we bring this to a close, for those of us who truly want to impact others, that's where I'm at in my life. And for those of us who are business owners, let me talk to your heart for a second. As a business owner, I know you care about your team. I know
Mm,
you do. You're some of the most selfless people out there. For those of you who are in management, you care about your team. You'll go to battle for them because you're selfless. You wouldn't be where you're at today as a leader without that empathy. You
mm,
care about your customers, the people you have the honor and privilege to serve. You care about your communities. You know that your product takes care of a lot of vendors. And honestly, we saw that COVID, we care about our vendors. We want that relationship because if they are good to us, we're good to, and we're good to them. It's a reciprocal relationship.
yeah.
So those of us in leadership, those of us who are business owners, or those of us who work for executives within the company, we see and we care so much. Take a moment and realize that it's okay to turn inwards a little bit and say, hey, are my actions today placing my family,
Mm,
my dreams, my aspirations, my desires, are they putting me in the direction to where 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, you look back with no regrets? You look back and say, you know what? I literally just changed the outcome of not only all those people that I care about, but my own family in this 5 year period of time. We've all got on an airplane before, I'm certain, and the flight attendant will say, "Hey, in the case of emergency, put a face mask on yourself before you put it on the minor child." The same is true for us. But for but my calling and my charge for business owners, especially business owners, is friends, don't wait too long. Don't wait
mm,
too long. After somebody who's literally coached thousands of business owners on how to build highly transferable businesses, most business owners don't wake up and they wait too long. And now they find themselves, everybody they've cared for, they've taken care of so many people and impacted so many lives, and now they find themselves destitute compared to where they could be.
mm,
So my challenge to you is that look at where you're at right now. Decide what is it you truly desire. What is it you truly want? Take the path less traveled. Look at that 4% out there. And then let's do something. Let's do something about it. 2025 could be the year that you rock it out. 2025 could be the year that you change your life for the rest of your life. I believe that.
absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's a great message to finish on. I just wanted to ask you one more question, if that's okay,
Sure.
Justin. And that is that with all that in mind, and I think that is fantastic guidance and advice and counsel. As we're going through the process though, can you just talk a little bit about the importance of protecting your time and structuring your time? So you talked before about you're very structured in terms of how you and your wife plan holidays, rest, recuperation, all that sort of stuff. But then you know when it's work, it's work. As a business owner, but also as an executive, because you work with CEOs as well of big organizations. What are a couple of high level strategies around protecting time so that we're not wasting it on let's just say the 80% effort that's only giving 20% of the results.
Yeah. And for each person, it's going to be different. So for a business owner, it's going to be a little bit more arduous. For an executive, it may be a little arduous. For a manager or somebody, it may be slightly different. But so some beliefs I have. And so I'm going to answer your question, but I got to give a core value in what I believe.
Yeah.
I believe that one day when we were on our deathbed, not trying to be morbid here, but here's the way I think. When we're on our deathbed one day, more than likely our customers, our vendors, our employees are not going to be around us. More than likely, it's going to be our significant other and our family, maybe our children, and maybe if we're blessed, one or two or three friends. Maybe
Mm,
if we're blessed. That's the reality of the situation. Also, no matter how much money, prestige, things of notoriety that we achieve in this crazy lifetime of 70, 80, 90, 100 plus years, it's going to be forgotten within a few hundred years. It's going to be
mm,
gone. And so if we have this brevity of life, scripture says life is a vapor, right? Just there for a second and it's gone tomorrow. If we have the brevity of life, then we have to truly determine what is our mission. For me, it happened on the mountaintop. My mission is to impact people. It's not to generate more revenue. It's
Mm.
not to win that next sale. It's to, can I meet Darren Mitchell and hopefully leave him better than whenever I met him before we met? Can I do that today? And if I did, great. What an outstanding day I've had.
Yeah.
Now, whenever we think that way, we find ourselves in a position of work. We find ourselves in a position where we can influence those day in, day out. I believe that if we approach our calendar with the mindset of abundance, just like we approach sales, just like we approach our business, we approach our calendar with a mindset of abundance, we win. During
Mm.
COVID, I saw this here in the United States. I don't know exactly how your side of the world dealt with it. I'm sorry, I should know this, but here in the United States, there were certain states that had 8 weeks of mandatory closure. There were certain states here in the United States that had 16 weeks of mandatory closure. I had the privilege of coaching literally hundreds of business owners during this time period, one on one. And in certain parts of the country, we had dentists and
Mm.
chiropractors and medical doctors who were unable to practice for 16 weeks. They literally could not work. Now, during that time period, they took care of their patients, they took care of the customers. Interestingly enough, Darren, even though they missed 4 months worth of work and they only produced on a calendar year, on a fiscal to fiscal year, 8 months, that 8 months yielded more revenue than the previous 12 months in sequential data points. Why? Because they compressed their time. They became hyper focused on what mattered. During
Mm.
this time period, I can remember telling our customers and our clients saying, look, the weekend you've got to refresh. When you get tired, shut your mind down. Take some time to refresh, because if you're tired, you're not operating at peak performance. I can remember having fights, literally my clients saying, shut the office down on Friday, don't work on Friday, go on vacation, take a long weekend, call your employees on Monday, tell them don't come in, take 4 days now, because their minds weren't refreshed. So number one is protect your mind to give you some time for refresh. So for me, I don't work on Saturdays and Sundays. I
Yeah.
shut my life down. I don't look at social media. It's my family time. It's when I'm at the church playing the piano for our church. It's when I'm on the tractor at my farm. It's whenever I'm playing my kiddos, right? It's my time to refresh and not think about work. But when I'm at work, I have certain structures to my days. Now, everybody's not the same. For example, that dentist, what we do is we say, hey, Monday from 11, from opening to 1 o'clock, that is your hardest treatment plans for the week, called block
Mhm.
scheduling. The same is true for me right now. On Mondays, I put my hardest task for that week on Monday mornings. Why? Because I want to get them out of the way. I
Yeah.
want to get them out of the way so I can move forward. And then I set every meeting I have during the week has an agenda, period. Every meeting has an agenda. Every meeting has to have an outcome. And then finally, as an executive, I have multiple people who control my life.
Mm.
I don't read my own emails. I don't post secret. I don't post my own social media stuff. I literally, you saw this happen. I walked into here. My assistants were setting up the room. They were firing the cameras up. I walk in and let's go, because I'm hyper efficient in my calendar. Wherever I'm at, I want to be there doing the $2,000, $4,000, $20,000 an hour work, and not the $8 an hour work. So for me, I calendar everything. I lock in my weekends. I lock time off for my family. I take, when I'm at work, Mondays and Fridays is non-production, and I like my day down to Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, 10, 12-hour days. It works
Mm.
for me and my family.
Love
Other
it.
clients do things differently. So my challenge would be is get super intentional around
Yeah.
your calendar, hyper intentional.
And protect it with your life. Become the
Absolutely.
custodian of your diary.
Absolutely.
Love it. Love it. Hey, Justin, this has been a phenomenal conversation. It's nearly on the hour, so I'm conscious of your nearly dinner time. For people wanting to connect with you and learn more about the great man Justin Goodbread, where is the best place for them to go?
Yeah, so I would say go to justingoodbread.com. There you can see things about our courses. We have several courses and several coaching programs that we offer business owners on how to rapidly accelerate their companies. And, I do have a podcast, The Justin Goodbread Show. It's out. I think we have 600 episodes out there on the Ethos. Feel free to connect with me on any of social media. Just Google my crazy name, Justin Goodbread. I'm out there. So I would love to hear from you if you hear this episode, especially on the opposite side of the world where the kangaroos are bountiful. I'd love to hear from your perspective. What is it that you are challenged with most about in your business today? I'd love to hear that from you, because what we'll do is we'll incorporate that in our Value Growth Academy training programs and try to help our business owners answer those particular questions. So I look forward to hearing from you and connecting with you.
Brilliant, brilliant. Hey, Justin, thank you so much on a Monday afternoon for taking some time. It's been an absolute pleasure having a conversation, and thanks for being a guest on the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast.
Thanks for having me, Darren. Appreciate it,
Cheers,
brother.
mate. All the best. Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com, and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.